忍の時代は終わる。
螺旋が
Boruto Uzumaki, a son of the Hokage who, ironically, has principles and goals that are completely opposite to his father's. Living in an era of peace and not feeling a sense of misery, sadness, and even hatred makes him grow up to be a child full of cheerfulness. But as time goes by until he turns 12 years old, everything changes instantly. The life that was originally surrounded by many friends, the people he loved the most, even his parents, now he has to feel a misery and even bear a burden born of hatred because of the accusation of the murder of a Nanadaime Uzumaki Naruto. But even so, not many understand what is the reason for the difference between Boruto at the age of 12 and 15, especially his emotions, his cold demeanor, and the changes in his appearance. I'm Nim, and today I will explain everything to all of you who haven't known about this before. First of all, I'd like us to take a little flashback to when Boruto wasn't fully transformed into what he is today, looking cold and even missing the smile on his face. Since his father's attitude towards Boruto, especially about how Naruto pays attention to Boruto, it has changed Boruto's perspective on Naruto, where his position as a Hokage. Hating and strongly refusing to become Hokage is one of his absolute choices. Even since Boruto met Sasuke for the first time, since then Boruto has also become convinced that his goal is not to become a Hokage, but rather like Sasuke. Boruto's perspective on Sasuke became increasingly clear. Sasuke was the person he had been searching for as his inspiration. Moreover, Boruto eventually learned a rumor he had never known before, that Sasuke was actually his father's rival. Even though Naruto's role in Boruto's life wasn't very significant, ever since Boruto officially became Sasuke's student, he tended to spend more time with Sasuke, especially when training his own abilities. But the big question is, does Boruto truly care more about Sasuke than his own father? You can draw your own conclusions by the end of this video, guys. And relax, guys. I'll try to keep things concise and cut down on unnecessary chatter. I'll make sure this stays straight to the point. So, beyond the issue of whether Boruto fully cares more about Sasuke than his father, of course it is absolute if Boruto is in fact more than that. Because believe it or not, Boruto cares more about his father and his village, even compared to himself. And of course, that is all proven to Boruto himself when he always remains in principle if he is willing to die, and is ready if Kawaki has to kill him in order to protect his father and even the world from the threat of a Momoshiki or part of Otsutsuki itself like Shinju. And if we go back to the main point, why does Boruto have such a drastically different aura after the time skip compared to before? There are several reasons. But surely, many of you wonder why Boruto didn't change emotionally or in attitude despite bearing all the suffering and hatred alone when Ida altered his fate with Kawaki. Or why he didn't react differently when Kawaki sealed away both his parents and even falsely accused him of killing Naruto and Hinata. The fact is, no matter what suffering Boruto endures or how much hatred he has to bear, none of it truly affects him, because he is an Uzumaki. However, the real reason his demeanor became so cold after the time skip is Sasuke. Once again, Boruto's shift into a more serious and cold personality is entirely because of Sasuke. Because basically, Sasuke is not just a teacher, he is his idol and also a surrogate parent. Naruto and Hinata, who are sealed, at least give confidence that they are fine for now. But Sasuke, who is trapped with an uncertain fate, absolutely everything must depend on what Boruto will do afterwards. That is the least that will determine the fate of the whole world and make him realize that he can no longer be a carefree, cheerful child. Despite all of Boruto's efforts and the training he had gone through with Sasuke, as well as all of the promises he made to become strong enough to not put anyone in danger again, he ultimately failed miserably at protecting Sasuke. This is what changed him. He seemed to be devastated when his teacher and surrogate parent had to end like that, and he also seemed to blame himself for the incident. And that's when he really changed and became cold. And this is also about Kawaki's actions. But I want to ask you all first, guys. Can we fully blame Kawaki's actions and decisions, including sealing Naruto and Hinata, and even making a false accusation stating that Naruto and Hinata died because Boruto was killed? So what do you think? Can we fully blame? And actually, this can be justified as a consequence. That's why Boruto doesn't feel the need to worry, because once again, guys, even though Naruto and Sasuke have the same sealed condition, of course, they both have different problems. In other words, the way to save them is also, of course, different. especially from how their absolute safety is sealed. Because believe it or not, between Boruto and Kawaki, they both had one common goal. Kawaki protected Naruto and Boruto protected Sasuke. However, it all ended with different results. Kawaki managed to save Naruto from all threats. But for Boruto himself, despite years of training with him, he still failed to protect his teacher. Because ironically, this is something that Kawaki will not fail to do, right? Even apart from the change in attitude and the burden that he had to bear, so that Boruto had to end up being cold, there was a huge psychological trauma due to knowing various future events, which of course were based on the prophecy seen by Koji. There are many probabilities in the future that Boruto has to face, including his death at the hands of Jura. Because of all the burden and the future of the worst possibilities, this is also the reason that caused Boruto to change completely. But if we closely observe Boruto's expressions in each panel of the chapters, I feel like that demeanor truly suits him, especially his empty gaze. Because once again, in almost every panel, he appears lost in thought, always wearing a serious expression on his face. He understands the gravity of this situation and the risks that come with it. With Kashin Koji explaining Boruto's destiny, he must fight for everyone and must be able to save them with his power. And in conclusion, the change in Boruto's attitude to be cold and very mature, the biggest factor is because of Sasuke and Kashin Koji. With the mental burden of losing Sasuke and not being able to do anything to prevent it, even though he had trained so hard, that was the real reason. But after losing Sasuke, he really focused and started to trust Koji completely. In fact, almost never once did Boruto contradict Koji's every word, and always moved based on instructions that were certainly based on the future that Koji had seen so far. Because, of course, he didn't want the same thing to happen to others. Although 2 chapters ago, Boruto seemed hesitant to trust and listen to Koji, especially in Sarada's situation, where he wanted to go and save her. And of those possibilities, what do you think is the biggest factor why Boruto, after the time skip, has such a cold attitude and seems very mature? I'd love to hear your opinions. Like and subs, I'm Nim. See you in the next episode. Bye-bye, Dadabayo.